They're claiming Hamas hasn't upheld its end of the deal, specifically by not returning the bodies that they knew they were likely not going to receive, all of them. At the same time, there's a wave of propaganda that has been posted online, really to stir up public support for finishing the job. Stories of Hamas executions, alleged abuse of the bodies, Palestinians being painted as rapists and terrorists. Meanwhile, Israel has restricted aid going into the Strip.
It's like now the world sees what Israel has been doing to the Palestinians. It's what they're doing to us. They're gaslighting us. This is exactly what the Palestinians have been facing for so long. They knew that there was going to be irretrievable dead bodies in the Strip before they signed off on the ceasefire. And now they're just claiming that it's a problem now. But we know why that is, because there must never be peace. Israel views peace as a threat. It's the threat of peace. There must always be friction. As long as there's settler colonialism, there must always be friction. There must always be violence. That's what settler colonialism is founded upon. That's what sustains it. You can never have peace by its very nature.
They might have resumed it at this point. We'll get into that, but there have been some reports of them restricting the aid as well as renewed strikes on
How insane of it, though. They spend the past 2 years turning Gaza to a rubble, burying all of these people alive, and now there's just tons and tons of rubbles. All these bodies are underneath, and they're crying that they should break the ceasefire because they can't get the bodies that they bombed out of the Strip. It's just gaslighting and deception, and they're bad at it. You know, they're just so bad.
In these recent days since the ceasefire, what is this all about? Let's go ahead and take a look at this. So this is, first of all, here's from the Times of Israel. Israel won't reopen the Rafa crossing, will limit aid to pressure Hamas for remaining slain hostages. As IDs confirmed, 4 hostages remains. Families of captives still in Gaza demand deal be put on hold until their loved ones return, accuse government of shirking immediate duty. The latest report.
Hamas told them, look, we're not going to be able to get those dead bodies. They're under. We don't even know where they are at this point.
Sorry, I believe that they've returned 8 of the bodies.
Hasbara skill issue, yeah. The one thing that they need to be really good at, they suck. They suck at all the things except for lies, cheating, bribing, blackmailing, and deception.
But it says Israel on Tuesday decided not to reopen the Rafah border crossing between the Gaza Strip and Egypt the next day as required by the ceasefire deal. So whenever you hear the propaganda that it's Hamas that doesn't live up to their end of the bargain, just remember it's Israel that really is the ones that don't actually.
It's like Satan said to himself, I'm going to create every depraved thing I can think of and imbue it into a people and then shoot it out of my twat. And that's at least for you.
Live up to their end of the bargain. And they use excuses. They make excuses. They say, well, no, Hamas didn't return.
Emanating from Satan's butthole.
The bodies. Well, Donald Trump even said it was going to take a while, and some of them it would be impossible. And Red Cross is on the ground helping out. Let me just slow down and let's go through this one by one. So Israel said it would also reduce the amount of aid flowing into Gaza as part of the sanctions against the terror group. So they're saying they're going to sanction them because they're not living up to their end of the deal. The move follows assessments by Israel defense officials that Hamas has not made significant efforts to return the remaining bodies of the hostages, and amid rising anger among their families, with the main group representing them demanding that the ceasefire agreement's implementation be halted until their loved ones are returned. All of the living hostages were returned. So they're talking about bodies that are buried into the rubble. But they're trying to say that.
Well, we're going to see how arrogance works out for them in the long run. But I think that's a major miscalculation. But you're right. I mean, when you commit crimes with impunity, or to a certain point, I agree with you, because the world has shown them that they don't need to put too much effort into being believed. But I think they've outplayed their hand.
They're not getting them fast enough. There were 28 bodies in total that they were supposed to be receiving. At the time of the writing of this article from Times of Israel, they had received 4 of the bodies. I believe they've since.
Yeah, it's so dumb, it's ridiculous. What would be the point for them to withhold the dead hostages? It just doesn't make any sense. The whole point of having hostages is to bargain for peace, to bargain for a ceasefire, and to get something in return, you know, like to get your hostages, the people that they kidnapped, back to you.
Received 8 of the bodies, but this is Trump even admitted this was going to be difficult. It was going to be difficult to find all of the bodies.
Yeah, please.
What will happen if Hamas says that it cannot locate or was not able to find all of the deceased hostages' bodies within the time frame?
Well, we'll have to see. I think that's going to be, it's largely been answered. We know where most of them are. Actually, the bodies are a bigger problem because some of the bodies are going to be a little bit hard to find. It's
October 9th, 2025.
a terrible thing to discuss even, but you understand, we're all people, we're grown-ups, we understand life. Nobody can understand this stuff because this could have taken place, but
Yeah, we're all people, but some people are more culpable in the commission of a genocide than are others.
we have the hostages for the most part, and so I don't think it's going to be overly big. The situation with the bodies, they say 20, 28. Some are going to be a little bit hard to find. But we're going to do the best we can.
So he said some of the bodies are going to be really hard to find. They knew this, and yet Israel is using it as an excuse to halt aid. They went from 600 trucks a day entering into Gaza to 300. They cut it in half. And then they say, this is a violation of the ceasefire agreement, that we're not getting the bodies back fast enough, when Trump even said. So this is just an excuse. That's all this is. This is one of those excuses. Netanyahu still has not declared an end to the war, and it was because he knew he could use excuses in order to restart the war. But look at this. How are we supposed to find bodies under the rubble like this? Gaza is buried in rubble. They've got
You might die trying.
thousands of Palestinians buried under the rubble that they haven't been able to recover, let alone Israeli hostages. How are they supposed to find the bodies? But nonetheless, they're trying. The Red Cross is helping them. They're trying to get the bodies back. And this is what Israel.
God, Israel.
Turns out one of the bodies wasn't correct, so this was again used as an excuse to to basically violate the ceasefire agreement. Here's from the IDF saying, following the completion of examinations at the National Institute of Forensic Medicine, the fourth body handed over to Israel by Hamas does not match any of the hostages. Hamas is required to make all necessary efforts to return the deceased hostages. I have no doubt that they're trying. I don't think they want to keep these bodies. For what reason would they want to keep the bodies?
Exactly.
They're trying to get them back. But again, how do you do that when it's looking like this in Gaza? How do you do that? Practically impossible.
You don't.
But nonetheless, here's NPR reporting that Israel is keeping the Gaza border closed.
I really want to hear from the 20 hostages that just got released. Are they going to be able to do any interviews, or are they also going to be found with CSAM on their hard drive and then ushered away? No interviews.
While reducing aid deliveries. So they went from 600 trucks down to 300 trucks, saying that they're upset because of the delays in the handover of the bodies of dead hostages by the militant group Hamas, according to NPR. But this is the reality. But some of the news organizations, this is France 24 English, reporting on some of the difficulties Hamas and the Red Cross and the Red Crescent are having trying to locate the bodies.
The Israelis accuse Hamas of acting slower than agreed in returning the remains, with Gaza lying in mostly rubble and littered with unexploded ordnance. Locating and identifying the remains.
This is outlined in international laws, by the way, the law of belligerent occupation, okay? The law of belligerent occupation states that an occupying force, an occupying entity, such as Israel is internationally recognized to be ever since 1967 formally, occupying entities must negotiate in good faith in order to bring an end to the occupation as soon as humanly possible. In other words, if you find yourself a belligerent occupier in that present circumstance, yes, it is a war crime, but you do still have rights. And being that you have rights, you also incur responsibilities. And one of those responsibilities is negotiating in good faith to bring an end to the occupation as soon as humanly possible. And I think what you see playing out before you, as we have seen, the more that you learn about history, the more that you learn about Israel's tactics and policies towards the Palestinians and really to the region at large, you find that they are guilty of never negotiating in good faith, always lying, always back-channeling, always cheating, always being manipulative and deceptive and intentionally sabotaging peace negotiations in order to to do the opposite. They don't want to give an inch. It's not to be tolerated, no matter how small or how big the achievement might be from the other side. They can't let it happen.
Is a big challenge. The International Red Cross, which is helping in the search operation, says it could take days or weeks, and that there is a possibility they'd never be found.
There is clearly a risk that will take much more time. What are we telling to the parties is that should be their top priorities. And again, not only when it comes to the human remains of hostages, but other human remains.
Hamas also told mediators that some of the remains are in areas controlled by Israeli troops. Israel had threatened to halve the amount of humanitarian aid into Gaza if the militant group did not act quicker, but in the early hours of Wednesday morning, reversed course. Israeli forces are opening the Rafa crossing between Gaza and Egypt to allow aid to enter as planned.
Okay, so at least they did reverse course on that after threatening and saying we're going to keep the Rafa border closed, the Rafa crossing closed, and we're not going to allow half of the aid in that we originally agreed to. They did have to change their minds on that. Why is that? Probably got a lot of pressure from the Trump administration saying, no, guys, you have to follow through with the deal. And we told you it was going to be difficult to find those bodies because guess what? You dropped like 10 times worth of nuclear bombs on the Gaza Strip. It was like 10 Hiroshima's worth of bombs that were used on the Gaza Strip during this war, during this genocide, this onslaught. I wouldn't even call it a war. One of the negotiators, an Israeli hostage negotiator, Gershon Baskin, said some of the Israeli hostages are impossible to find due to being buried under the rubble. Let's watch that. Here he is.
We spoke to Israeli hostage negotiator Gershon Baskin, who told us that the reality is some bodies sadly may never be recovered.
Somewhere in this landscape of ruin and loss are the bodies of the remaining hostages.
There are two things that we have to be aware of. Many of the Hamas commanders who were responsible for burying these Israeli hostages are no longer alive. They were killed by the Israelis. And the second thing is that there are thousands of Gazans who are unaccounted for, who are believed to be buried underneath the rubble of buildings that Israel bombed.
Okay, so what you have is two things going on, according to the reports. One is some of the bodies are actually wherever the Israelis are still controlling 55% of the strip. So some of the bodies might
you control the majority of the Gaza Strip. Why don't you go ahead and find where the bodies are? Somewhere, wherever you took over.
The areas they're controlling. And they're trying to blame Hamas. And remember, once again, let me repeat that. Israel is controlling 55% right now of the Gaza Strip. They hold the majority of it. So if the hostages' bodies
I think they still control 110% of the Gaza Strip, but
and their half, then they need to attempt to locate those bodies. It's not on Hamas. Hamas is not allowed to be there. But nonetheless, Israel uses it as an excuse. Doesn't matter that they're in control of 55%. Another thing is Gershon
Israel must always need a pretext.
Saying, look, I mean, a lot of these commanders are dead. I mean, the commanders that would know where these bodies were buried, they're now dead. A lot of the people are dead. I mean, you got them, Israel. You won. Remember, that's what you wanted. You wanted to kill them. You killed them. There you go.
It's almost like Israel doesn't give a about the hostages and only uses that as a pretext to do more bad shit.
You win, but guess what? That was the only guy that knew where the last body was buried. And now people are scrambling looking for this, but people who knew are dead. So you've got multiple problems going on there. But what is Israel? Israel is not reasonable. They're not reasonable at all. And they're just looking for excuses to continue their war. Here is the Intercept actually reporting that Israel look at these mounting ceasefire violations, saying the Israeli government broke the terms of the ceasefire deal on Tuesday, killing at least 7 Palestinians, many of whom were returning to their homes after months of displacement, and announcing it would restrict the amount of humanitarian aid into Gaza. So we saw them reverse the humanitarian aid issue, right? They said they were going to go from 600 trucks to 300 trucks. They ultimately reversed that, but they're still killing Palestinians. This report is saying 7 Palestinians. I've seen other reports saying that it's upward of 30 or 60 Palestinians that have been killed over the last few days. The agreement stipulated that Israel would halt all of its military operations and that the flow of aid would return to levels seen under the previous ceasefire, during which at least 600 aid trucks entered the territory each day. Despite this, Israel's military carried out 2 strikes, and Kogat, the military unit that controls shipments of aid into Gaza, told aid groups that it would limit deliveries to half the amount, 300 trucks daily, agreed upon in the deal. The Israeli government said it would not reopen the Rafah crossing along the border of Egypt, a key avenue for the delivery of aid. Now remember, Hamas is not saying we're not returning the bodies to you. They gave everybody that's alive back. And they're not saying we're not returning the bodies to you. We're just not doing it fast enough, according to the Israelis. It's only been, how many days? 6 days. And they want them to locate the 28 bodies buried under the rubble. Again, after many of the Hamas commanders have been killed who would maybe know where the bodies are buried. Again, even though Israel controls 55% of the strip. I mean, this is all just nonsense. And this is the point. The point is this is nonsense meant to carry out the continued genocide, the plan to take all the land and clear it of Palestinians. Israel carried out the attacks and restricted aid as it accused Hamas of failing to hand over the bodies of the remaining Israeli prisoners in a timely manner as promised in the ceasefire agreement. Within the 72 hours allotted in the deal, Hamas returned the 20 living Israeli prisoners in exchange for about 2,000 Palestinian prisoners, many of whom were detained in Gaza during the war without charges. Hamas has returned the bodies of 8 individuals, according to the Red Cross and the Israeli government, while the Israeli government is admitting that too, that they've returned 8, while the search for 20 others continue. On Tuesday, an Israeli drone strike killed at least 6 people who were inspecting their homes in a residential area of Gaza City. A separate Israeli drone strike killed another individual in the territory outside of Khan Yunis. According to Middle East Eye, and again on Monday, Israeli soldiers killed a man identified by state-sponsored news outlet Rafa as Khalid Barbak while he inspected his home in the downtown area of Khan Yunis. So they're just killing people. This isn't like a one-off oops accident. Sorry about that. It just we were testing things and one kind of fired off on it had a mind of its own. I mean, any excuse whatsoever, but instead there is no excuse for this. They're still just killing people. So Israel is absolutely violating the ceasefire agreement. Hamas is living up to its end of the ceasefire agreement. Israel is not. It's pretty simple at this point.
Thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe to the page to help it grow. And if you'd like to support my work, join my Patreon for exclusive content.